Well, good morning, everyone, and thanks everyone for joining us today. And one of the things that I'm here for, because I'm not a broker, but one of the reasons I'm here is I'm the chair of the Forms Committee this year. And this past meeting in October, the Forms Committee, who has spent months and months on working on an escalation addendum, finally decided that they tweaked it enough and it looked good, and we wanted to present it to the board of directors for approval next week. But based on some feedback we received from a previous brokers forum regarding the listing agreement that we had presented, it came to our attention that it was probably a really great idea to present the escalation addendum and any other form that we're thinking about revising over to the broker side and have your input before we submit it to the board of directors for review to see if there's anything that you guys can give us on the Forms Committee to maybe tweak it a little bit further, or any opinions, good or bad, so that we can do our job better for you. So we did send over a copy of the escalation, or Susie, I should say, sent over a copy of the escalation addendum to everyone prior to this meeting. And so if you do have it, you can pull it up, or you can simply look at it on our screen here. And if you, and I just wanted to briefly go through it with you. So the beginning part is it's pretty self-explanatory. You're just putting your names of your buyers and your sellers in when you're filling this out as the buyer's agent. The first section and the first section where it's labeled 1, 2, and 3 is all to do with what the buyer is going to offer into the seller when you are involved in a multiple offer situation. The first section is all about what your offer price is, how much more over anybody else's net purchase price is going to be, and then what that escalation price is. It also allows for you to change or modify any terms of your original agreement under that second line, or that, I'm sorry, that last line on number 1. So in other words, say you are writing an offer, you find out, you submit it, you find out now there's multiple offers, you're going to do a highest and best, and you're going to do a escalation addendum. You're going to fill out section 1 and say now your buyer wants to waive a pest inspection, or maybe they want to give an additional deposit. You're going to indicate what that modification is to those terms under except as follows, that little line right there. Okay. The second section of the top portion of the addendum is all about the appraisal. And we went back and forth in the Forms Committee as to whether or not we should put something in here, but it came to our attention that more often than not, whenever there's a hot property, the appraisal is something that the seller and the buyer really should talk about if there is multiple offers on the property and it is something that is going to play into negotiations. So the first checkbox that they can check as a buyer is that they really don't want to negotiate anything more at this time, that they want to continue to keep the appraisal contingency in place, and that they, at this time, they're not able to, or they don't wish to pay any amount above appraised value. The second checkbox they can check is that the buyer is crazy or really wants the property, and they're willing to pay any difference at all, no matter what it is between the appraised value and the escalated purchase price. And they're going to provide some kind of proof that they can do so. Now that proof can come in the form of a pre-approval letter. It can come in the form of cash, that they have on hand, because remember that, there are times when the buyers have the cash available, even if they're doing a mortgage. And then the third checkbox is that they don't really want to leave it that open-ended. They want to have a cap on how much they would want to pay above appraised value. And then the third checkbox allows you to put that cap in there. And so it allows the seller to understand where the buyer is going to come from. And of course, you do need to provide some proof of funds as far as that goes. The third line item is indicating that the buyer is making this offer of their own volition and agrees to hold us harmless regarding their decision. Now, of course, you've had these discussions with them about sections 1 and 2 But we did feel that that was necessary. And we had seen that because we did go through several different escalation clauses that are used across the country. And we felt that a statement of this would be great, would be a good idea to throw into this agreement. And then they sign it, you send it off to the seller for review. And if the seller accepts the offer, the bottom section of this is all that you really essentially need to do besides signing the contract, or you can do further, and let me explain. So if the seller decides to move forward with your offer, they're going to put the purchase price that you want at right there, okay? Then they're going to explain what that other bona fide offer was that they had received that was close, that made or escalated your purchase price. So they're going to say where it came from, what that purchase price was, if there was any seller concessions that would change what that net purchase price is. And then you obviously put the net purchase price in this line item and when it was received, because good Lord, you don't want to be going up against an offer that was 2 months ago. You want to, it needs to be an offer that was being considered at the same time your offer was being considered. The third section says that the seller hereby agrees to provide a copy of that offer, okay? So that they understand that you have that, it's proof. All offers shall be compared using the net purchase price. It also is just a little bit of an informative sentence so that everyone understands that if the seller did receive multiple offers with multiple escalation clauses, it could result in a price escalation for that buyer, and they should know that anyway. The fourth section, or section D, indicates how you're going to write this up at this point, because you can do it in several ways. Now, if you have a cash buyer, you may just say, you know what, signing this thing and going back and having the seller sign the original contract is good enough, and crossing through and making changes. And so they would check off that they would just want to modify the purchase and sales agreement and initial all the changes. Or they may decide that you want to just revise the contract with all of the changes made, and that the seller and the buyer have agreed to do so. And this addendum is actually what secures that. Once this is signed by both sides, it's considered legally binding, and people should, and of course that's up to interpretation, obviously, and that they should seek advice of their attorney before they sign any document, which we believe was a good idea to throw on here too. So that concludes the escalation clause, and I'd like to open up the forum for discussion. If anyone has a question, either you can throw it in chat, or if you have any thoughts, but I'm gonna kind of take a look and see if I can see all the faces here. Does anybody have any thoughts, good or bad? Any changes that you would see? Any opinions, complaints?
I think it's well done, Paula.
I have a question. Let's see, raise my hand.
Yeah,
Sure.
Neil, go ahead.
Yeah, the question is, do we have to get permission from the other buyers or their agent who submitted offers to submit this offer to this, to submit the other offer? So in other words, let's say Taylor Realty Group's offer was accepted. We want to see proof of what the highest and best was on the prior one. Do we need to get permission, or does the seller need to get permission from the other buyer or buyer's agent who submitted?
So from what I understand, and I'm just going off of common practice, the answer is no. The attorneys may have a different take on that, but as far as I know, this offer was submitted to the seller. Now it is the seller's to do it with what they want to it. Whenever I submit a bona fide offer, like if I'm working, say, with a seller and I need to send that bona fide, I cross out any confidential information. So the buyer's information, their name, their address, so that, there is some confidentiality in there, so that people aren't aware of who those buyers were. But they should be able to see the terms and conditions of that offer on that contract, and it has to be a bona fide offer. And I have to, in all pages too, that's the other thing, because you could submit page 1, which I've had some agents try to give me page 1. What if there's something on page 4 that changes the net offer price? Not all, not all agents fill out the documents correctly. Sometimes they don't use the e-card document that shows everything on page one. So, just like in mortgage underwriting, they want to see all pages of a bank statement. They want to see all pages of a tax return, even though 55 pages of that tax return don't do anything for their underwriting, but they need to see them to make sure there isn't anything on there. So same thing with getting a copy of the entire offer.
I'm just wondering if, well, I don't know, is Andrew or John going to respond to that, or is that, we don't need to get any
Attorneys, please feel free to jump in.
Who are you asking if they have to give permission to disclose? I lost you.
the buyer that submitted the offer to the seller, do they?
No, you don't know any
Either the
response.
seller have to disclose it or anything along those lines?
Andrew, do you think they need to do what Paul is suggesting, is cross off the personal info, the name?
So I just want to make sure I just got a 120-page fax that was going off in my ear, so I couldn't follow everything that you were saying. So if you're talking with escalation and you got the first offer and now you want to present it to the other side to
Prove that
No.
they have to go.
that's not what Camille, that's why I'm
escalation is
asking.
going into
Camille's saying
effect.
no. Camille,
Right,
what are you asking?
So here's what I'm asking. So an escalation clause is presented to the seller along with other multiple offers. Let's say for this instance, there isn't any other escalation clause. The seller decides to accept the contract with the escalation clause. The part of this addendum states that the escalation clause asks for the other contract that was the highest and best before the escalation clause was utilized. So does that other, say, buyer two have to, does the seller have to get permission from buyer two to submit that contract as per, what is that, paragraph 3 or something, Paula, in the addendum, in order to give the information on and give a copy of that contract,
Yeah, can you
all
go
4
down to that
pages of the
sentence?
contract.
It's under section C.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Should result in price escalating by the maximum price. No, I think you got to present it to them, and it's probably, like Paula said, is redact the personal information that's on there. But that's the only way you can satisfy the escalation clause, is to show what that offer is.
Did you
Okay.
talk, Paula, about putting in saying the complete offer should be included? Because I've many times just gotten page 1.
Well, page 1 is not an entire offer, correct?
Correct.
So when you are submitting a quote unquote bona fide offer, that's the whole, you've got to submit the entire offer, not just
Okay.
page 1. It doesn't say to submit page 1. It says the other bona fide offer.
I have a question
it's a-
from Henry. Henry is asking, can you run through the thinking on multiple escalation offers?
So you're talking about in section C where it says all offers shall be compared using, if seller receives multiple offers with escalation clause, this could result in the price escalating to the buyer's maximum purchase price. It's just essentially making the buyer aware and the seller aware, or more the buyer, that their price may max out. They may end up having to pay what here up in section 1, the escalated purchase price, that maximum amount, because someone else may decide that they also want to escalate, or it doesn't even necessarily have to be in an escalation, but if it is, then that can actually make them go all the way up to their maximum. So it's just giving them that information.
I guess
So-
at the end of the day, it's really up to the seller which offer they want to accept, and as long as it's within the terms framed
Right.
in their
I just-
offer.
I just lost out on a deal where I was 70,000 over asking on a house that was only around the $400,000 mark. And I can tell you that the other offer that was accepted was less than ours.
Right,
So it's everything is up to the seller as far as
Right.
what they want to accept. They don't necessarily have to take the maximum
Sure.
because they may not like the other terms, or maybe
Right.
the terms of someone else's offer that's lower were better. I don't know what the terms were, but I'm gonna guess that they waived inspections and had a non-refundable deposit or some combination thereof that my clients were not willing to waive.
right. I mean, I know some agents who, once they see an escalation clause, will just counter at the max of the escalation, says, look, you wanted to go up this was your limit, here we are. But that's,
And that
everybody
doesn't
does
mean
their
that the
own
buyer,
dance.
right, and it doesn't mean that that buyer has to abide by that rule.
Right,
So I've had
right.
this similar where a buyer has come in or a seller has come in and said, hey, we don't want escalation clauses, but they changed the game on us at that point. So, if your seller in the beginning, it's a conversation you need to have with your seller before you place the house on the market. If you know it's going to be a hot property or it's even a possibility, and they don't want to accept escalation clauses, it would be prudent to tell buyers then and there before they submit an escalation clause in, because now that buyer feels vulnerable that they've provided all of their cards to that seller, and potentially they don't want to essentially go up to that amount unless they are beating another offer out. Maybe their maximum purchase price would be less than that amount if they're thinking that they're not going to be competing. So
Yep.
And that was, that sometimes is the case. You'll have somebody that says, if I
Sure.
have to beat someone else out, I will go 50,000 over. But if you're just asking me to tell you a maximum, I'm going to probably only go 25, and if I don't get it, I don't get it.
So I guess if multiple escalation clause offers were received, you'd have to give both of those back with to
You'd
prove-
have to submit the escalation clause in. So if you had, say you had one offer at $100,000 escalation, the escalated purchase price was $100,000. Okay, and say they started at 50. Okay, just for the sake of having an example. And your offer as buyer 2 is 125 escalated, right? And you're willing to only go up 5,000 over, okay? In that scenario, then you would really only be going up to the 105 because the other escalation clause was maxed out at 100. You would not have to go up to your 125, but you would be competing against another escalated offer.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions? John just joined us, so welcome.
Henry,
Yeah.
did you have a
so-
question?
Yes, so keep playing that out. So your escalation clause goes up to 105 against the other escalation clause.
Yep.
They then see that they've got a 105 out there and they counter back at their whatever 110, whatever the terms are of them.
Who's
I mean,
who's
you're-
countering at 110? I've lost that
All right,
train.
so let's say you're looking at 2 escalation clauses, right?
Okay.
Escalation clause 1 starts, or their offer starts at 100. And
No, they maxed at 100. That's their escalation maxed at 100.
oh, all right, you're saying that's their escalation max. Well, I'm saying
Correct.
that, let's say they offer 80, they're maxing at 100.
Yep, okay.
That's A. Then B comes in and they say, I'll beat any other offer by 5,000 up to 110. Do you automatically assume that the new offer, the final offer price is 110?
No, it's 105 because you were only going up 5,000.
Well, A
Over
goes up
anyone
to
else's offer.
105, then B is beating the 105.
No.
Right.
The A only went up to 100, right?
All right, so A goes from up to a max of, well, they're at 80,
But their escalation is to 100.
right? Do you
And
automatically
so-
take them up to their max?
Well, because they're willing to pay it,
Yeah.
right?
So-
So yes,
So instead of going back and forth 85, 90, 95, 100, you automatically go to 100.
It already, yes, that's how it escalates. And then their maximum escalation is 100. And so therefore someone else is willing to pay 100. So therefore the other offer B, or whatever you call it, is escalated by 5 over that to
Right.
105.
So I guess another way of thinking about it is you've got an escalation clause. You've got 2 offers with an escalation clause. You assume that the lower escalation clause is the one, max is the one to be beat. Right? If it was a fixed price, if A came in at 80,000,
And it would be 85.
then it would be 85.
Mhm.
But if A comes in at 80,000 with 100 cap, then you have
It's
to beat
against
the
the cap.
100.
Yep,
Yeah.
so that's why, if you look at section C, the last sentence, it says, if seller receives multiple offers with escalation clauses, this could result in the price escalating to the buyer's maximum purchase price.
All right.
So essentially, it's trying to explain that escalation clause can actually increase where the maximum bid goes,
Right.
because now you're competing one escalation clause against another escalation clause.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? And otherwise, we'll move on to the topic about RESPA.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you so much, Paula. That's coming before the Board of Directors this week. So hopefully you'll be able to use it soon. We are very fortunate to have both of our board attorneys with us today, as well as Jean Marconi, who used to be the attorney at CTR. This topic is on the schedule because I, a few weeks ago, got an email from an alarm company asking me if I wanted to earn some money by offering an alarm to, I didn't represent the buyer, I represented the seller who used to have an alarm company. And I could get like 2 referrals, one to the seller at their new location and one to, if I referred the buyer to this alarm company. And it was, I forget, do you remember, Susie? I think it was $50, or it might even.
It was 400 for both,
Oh.
if I recall.
Yeah, it was a lot of money. And I was like, is this legal? Like, so I sent it up to CTR and it just didn't seem very appropriate to me. And the answer came back that, because it's RESPA, you can't do it. But we're going to have a discussion and the attorneys are going to discuss this. The alarm company thing is not really fall under RESPA because it's not something that's included in closing. So, and we'll be addressing the RESPA rules in Article 6, and I'm gonna maybe open it up with Jean Marconi if you'd like to give your thoughts on this.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you all again.
Nice to see
Thanks
you.
for
too,
having
Jim.
me. Andrew, John, nice to see you guys.
Susie, maybe you
Um,
could take the agenda down so we can see them in the big screen.
Sure.
There we go.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Okay. You don't necessarily automatically conclude that something is not considered a closing service. I mean, you've got an alarm company with a buyer that's going to be establishing the alarm company possibly at the closing. So it could conceivably be that situation. You have, and you see a lot of these things. I've seen them with fuel oil dealers, for example, propane dealers. If you recommend them, they'll send this, they'll send that. So let's cover a few basics with RESPA, and then we'll get into Article 6, because Article 6 is actually more expansive than RESPA when it comes to what it includes. The classic definition of RESPA is that you cannot be paid a consideration for the referral of closing business. All right, so it's not necessarily settlement services closing business. Consideration, don't think of it just as money. In the case of the alarm company, they were offering a check, but consideration is not necessarily just money. It can be services. It can be paying some expense that would usually belong to the broker or to the agent. So for example, I say, here, I'm going to give you, and I had this example last week. We like you, and we'd like to pay for some marketing for you. So we'll pay to have these brochures printed for you. All right. Well, that would ordinarily be the agent's expense. And if you've got a closing settlement service provider paying for that, that is as much consideration as if they wrote the check. All right. So we've got several different areas with this stuff. One is RESPA. All right. The second one is there's some specific statutes. For example, there's a specific statute that says that a mortgage broker cannot pay a real estate agent for the referral of business. That's a Connecticut statute. We've got another one that concerns attorneys. Attorneys cannot pay for the referral of business. So, and then we've got Article 6, which is pretty all-inclusive. In other words, it's not limited to just settlement services. So it would include a lot of other stuff. Article 6 talks about real estate products or services. That can be home warranty programs. It could include mortgage financing. It could include title insurance. It would include alarms. It would include contractors. It would include lots of other real estate related products or services, home heating oil dealers. And what it says is that if you are recommending that particular product or service, you have to disclose to the client that you are receiving a benefit or a payment because of your referral. All right. Now the article itself says realtors shall not accept any commission, rebate, or profit on expenditures made for their client without the client's knowledge and consent. But if you look at the standard of practice, it's more specific and says that even when recommending real estate products or services, you have to disclose that you're receiving a financial benefit as a result of the disclosure. So Article 6 doesn't necessarily prohibit it. So like in the case of the alarms company, if we're looking at the article, we're looking at Article 6, it doesn't say you can't do it. It simply says that when you're talking to that seller, you have to say, basically, I'm a paid endorser. I'm getting paid to make this referral to you. If it was a settlement service, if we were to consider it a settlement services, it'd be flatly prohibited. So Andrew and John, I don't know what your take is on it.
Gene, I think the last kind of 20 seconds of what you just said really encapsulates everything. If it's a settlement service provider, it can't happen. And if it's not, it could, assuming you follow Article 6 and disclose. And a lot of this, is it or is it not a settlement service provider? There are some that are in the gray area. And Gene, I know you and John say the same thing. If you ever call us and ask, we're going to be extra conservative about that opinion and probably err towards the side of it being a settlement service provider and it being controlled by RESPA. But it's really the two layers. Does RESPA allow it? And if it does, then are you disclosing it? That's really boils it down to that. So Bonnie, in your case, I guess you could take the position that a security company is not a settlement service provider, but I'm sure we could spin the facts a way that makes them one. But even if
full
we assume
disclosure, I didn't contact them.
I'm always of the opinion that it's better to be safe than sorry in these situations.
Yeah, I just thought I brought it up to Susie's attention because, I'm sure there's probably some newer agents who don't know that you can't, when it is a RESPA followed business, that you're not allowed to take these things. And I thought we should remind our brokers about that.
Mhm.
And are there any limits to the amount if it is okay and it's all vetted and
It's-
passes all the tests?
No,
Is there a
no, it's
limit?
called a thing of value. And the thing of value is, when I was in law school, it could be a peppercorn. It's not a monetary thing. It's whether you get a thing of value. Like Gene said, it could be a cash payment, or it could be some other quote thing of value. And that could be,
Yeah, I mean, Andrew's right. If it's a definite settlement service provider, let's say it's a lender, a mortgage lender, which would clearly be a settlement service provider, the limit is 0. Can't take anything.
Yeah.
I've always wondered why they don't revise the Code of Ethics, the National Association of Professional Standards, to revise Article 6 to, remove closing settlement rebates from that article.
Well,
I mean, they could, Susie, because it's prohibited by law. I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
no, I was just going to say the same thing. Basically, I mean, you have an overriding factor here, and that's RESPA. So, there's two types of enforcement action that you guys are talking about. One, under RESPA, is criminal, and you could go to jail and be fined and all of that. And the second, and you could also be prosecuted civilly, by the way. And then the second is, whether you want to maintain your license, because that's ultimately the risk under violating the Code of Ethics. So it's really two sets of enforcement, and you really have to be cognizant of both. Which one scares you the most is I guess, which one you want to follow. I mean, RESPA is definitely more specific and clear. Article 6 is fairly simple as it relates to non-settlement services, that you can accept something of value so long as you are disclosing it to your client.
Does any of the brokers or broker associates on the call have any examples of recent incidents of this with any of their agents? Is anybody having emails like I've been getting?
I think I got the same email you got.
Oh,
2.
okay. Well,
Same email being the solicitation from the alarm company, or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you guys were being consulted or asked about particular situations.
and I did mention it to Kristen Hassany up at CTR, whether, I should give him her number. And she said, no, we're counsel only for realtors, not alarm companies. But, I have not replied to them, but I don't know if they realize that they're getting into shaky territory.
Well, interestingly, they may or may not be in shaky territory, right?
Right.
Your ethics preclude you from doing what they would want you to do, but their ethics, assuming they have any, do not, unless it falls under RESPA, right? So if we're talking strictly about the Code of Ethics, the solicitor in this case, the alarm company, is maybe violating your ethics in their interaction with an agent, but they probably have no prohibition against doing what they're doing, unless you could somehow categorize them as a settlement service provider under RESPA.
Right.
And that's probably, notwithstanding, I don't mean to contradict Andrew, but it'd probably be a stretch.
yes. You like to contradict me, John.
No, never, almost never.
Yeah,
So
but I mean,
Bonnie,
you could.
if we're talking strictly, if we're talking strictly about Article 6, so it's post-closing. Closing's already happened. Here comes a solicitation from the alarm company saying, oh, we understand that you represent these buyers, and if you recommend us, we'll give you $400 or whatever. Well, under Article 6, you're not necessarily prohibited from doing it, but you would have to disclose to the buyers when you make the recommendation that, hey, I'm getting paid to mention this.
Yeah, I mean, change the facts a million different ways and make it a landscape tree service company, or make it, your tree guy that your buddies with says, I'll give you $50 for every client you send me. It's not a RESPA violation, but you still have to disclose that you're getting a kickback for that referral. Well, kickback,
Right,
not a word, but.
And now let's go into RESPA. I mean, if a settlement service provider, if a lawyer in Connecticut is contacting you and wants to establish a relationship, and they say to you that they're going to contribute to a fund that will help you with your advertising for every closing that you send, clearly that is a RESPA violation. And unless there's a disclosure to your client, it's also a violation of Article 6.
Okay, well, that's good. I think it's pretty clear. Does anybody have any questions about that for the attorneys?
I have a question.
Okay,
I just we are closing on a property and the propane company said that they wanted to reimburse. We wanted to get the final read and the price per gallon. And they said that they wanted to give the money back to the seller instead of having it done at the closing.
Yeah, and then they bill the buyer direct, and they bill
That's
the buyer
Osterman.
directly. Yeah.
That's Osterman.
No, it's
propane.
another one. It's Buckley.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Buckley.
Okay.
I've never dealt with Buckley, but this seller's had them for years. So I told my secretary transaction coordinator to know everything has to be done at the closing so that all the monies is paid from the buyer to the seller, reimbursing the seller. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I mean, that's gonna be governed by whatever agreement that propane company has. There's a few of them that do that. They issue a credit back to the seller for whatever's in the tank, and then they sign a new agreement moving forward with the buyer and rebill them for whatever's in the tank. So the seller is getting their money for that normally we do as an adjustment at closing, but it's being handled by the vendor. That does happen quite a bit.
yeah, Osterman, you're right, does that.
Yeah, they were the only ones that I was aware of, but yeah, that's a contractual thing, and they have every right to do it. It doesn't. There's nothing that would obligate us to handle that at closing if the vendor is going to be handling it the way they describe.
So it's just between the seller and the contractor, you're saying?
Seller, buyer, contractor. Yes.
Yeah. And then the buyer has to decide if they want to continue with that vendor or go with another propane
Right.
company and get the tank ripped out and new tank put in. And so, no, you don't need, that doesn't present any issues.
As long as we're talking about propane, I have 2 listings right now that have underground tanks that are not owned by the owners, and it's pretty uncommon, but and I guess it's the responsibility, even though it's owned by the propane company, they're not going to take it out of the ground. Have you had any dealings with that? Any of the attorneys?
Yes.
But yeah, Bonnie, don't bet on that. There was a case in
Yes.
Glastonbury where the day after the closing, there was an excavator in the front yard and they were pulling the tank out.
The
Actually,
propane
the
company?
propane company pulled the tank out of the ground. That's what kind of brought this whole leased tank business to a
At the
head, and why
propane
on the
company's
property condition
expense.
disclosure form, it now asks whether there are any
Huh.
leased
Why did they
appurtenances
dig
to
it
the
up?
house.
Because it's their
Why-
tank.
It's their
Their
tank, right?
It's their
They own
tank.
the tank.
Because the
The
new
buyer
buyer
probably-
didn't want to use them?
The buyer probably said, I don't want to use you. And they said,
Exactly.
okay, you don't have to, then I'm coming to get my tank.
So I had a situation where they apparently they have a special locking device that they can place on the tank that basically renders it useless to the new owner. And that's what happened in my circumstance.
Oh,
This
man.
company just drove onto the property after the closing and locked the tank in a way that the client couldn't use it anymore. It actually creates interesting situations because these propane companies are not incredibly sophisticated, or some of them are not incredibly sophisticated in terms of what they need to do in order to protect their interests. So, when we do a title search and we do not find a UCC filing for a propane tank,
Which you very
there's no
rarely
way
do.
for
You
us.
very rarely have them, right, John?
Right. There's no way for us as the attorney to know whether that tank is owned by, well, first of all, we don't know if there's an underground tank, but assuming we knew whether there was an underground tank or not, without the UCC filing, there's no way for us to know whether that tank is a leased tank or whether it's an owned tank. And without the UCC filing, conceptually, if you're a good faith purchaser for value, then you have no obligation to the propane company who does own the tank for anything, for payment. They can't come on your property to remove it, nothing.
Until they do.
However, there's no other company likely that will fill it unless you can prove ownership.
Well, what if
So-
one of the tanks is at its life's end? I mean, the owner would like the propane company to dig it out. Do you think they would?
If they could put a new one in
Yeah.
with a 5-year contract, maybe.
Okay, well, we're gonna open up the floor to any topics that people want to talk to, and then we'll go over some reminders of things that, well, you want me to do that first, Susie? So the main thing we really want our members to do is please vote in the election. I know it's been a little confusing. I personally had a trouble. You have to vote for 2 things, the bylaw revision and the the new board of directors members. So make sure you do that. If you're having any trouble, call Susie, or you can come to the board of directors special election at the beginning of the meeting this Thursday.
Please do, because we've only got until Wednesday at 5 p.m. And we are currently at 90 people. We need 110, so I just need 20 more. We're almost there. But if you could please go to easternctrealtors.com, go to my eCar, go to your portal. You're going to need your NERDS ID. There's a link to get that. Your password is your last name with a capital first letter. Go to the elections. There are 2. There's blue voting buttons to do it. Choose the first one, which is the bylaws revisions. There are 3 clicks to get to before you can submit. And then you need to go back up to the election tab, open that up and see the next election with the leftover blue button to vote. And that will be your board of directors. Go through the same steps and you will have completed both elections. I apologize for the difficulty in those steps, but we just need 20 more people to ratify these 2 votes. Thank you.
So if everybody on this meeting does it, we'll be good. You can pay your dues. It's open now for dues payment. There has been a reduction in the cost of your dues. Thank you to the board of directors this year, and good job because of COVID. We've done well, and we're giving you a rebate. There's also a opt-out with some very specific things. I'm not going to get into it, but if you really don't use a central lock and you don't want to use a 1-day code, you can see the instructions in the dues thing about that. The application fee to join as a new member is now, instead of $250 for the brokers who are recruiting members, it's now $125. We heard loud and clear from many of you brokers, and we tried to accommodate that. And transfer and secondary members do not have to pay an application fee. And so then I see in the chat question from Kathy Dupree about mandates coming for licensing. There is, and Carol's on. I don't think there's much news since we had our CTR board of director meeting last Thursday, but the regulations on teams is not out. Probably not going to get it before the end of the year. Is there anything more you want to add, Carol? For all of you that know, Carol, our member, is the state president this year. Done a great job.
I also just saw that Kathy added any mandates about vaccines, and
Okay.
that I know nothing about, so I'm not going to say that. The only encouraging news I've gotten on Teams since last Wednesday is that the DCP is accepting people to allowed to use their nicknames. So you don't have to be Cynthia. If you're a Cindy, you can still be a Pinky or a whatever. So that they are working with us. It's happening every day. And, you know, when things are finished, we'll certainly let you know. But that was very encouraging because at first they were like, you must use the name on your license. So they have softened up to that now and are allowing people to say, I'm whoever, but I use this name in my life and this is what I want on my signs. So that was a positive, but that's really all I have for that. And there's no other mandates on licensing other than the changes to get in the broker's licensing, which we've talked about before.
Okay. Does anybody else have any issues and they want to talk about with our attorneys and our visiting attorney, Jean Marconi? Anything you've had come up with business? Anybody having ethics issues, or you're all good? Oh, good. Everybody's not having any problems. So December 8th is the community benefit raffle. December 31st is the deadline for ethics for all realtors, brokers and salespersons. Paula, who just gave a great presentation on the escalation form, will be your president next year, and her installation and volunteer appreciation will be January 13th at the Coast Guard Officers Club. And so put that on your calendar. And January 31st is your last day to pay your e-car dues without penalty. So you're able to do it now. If you want to do it ahead of time, there is dues payments too for your salespeople. And anybody have anything else they want to
I
add?
forgot to mention that the committee signups are also available if you would like to get onto a committee for 2022. That has gone out. You can email me. I'll be sending that out again. And in the past 4 or 5 years, I want to say, pretty much since I got here, we have made that installation banquet free to committee members. So I don't see any reason why that wouldn't be the same. So that's a good incentive to think about joining a committee for next year if you haven't been on one. We love to see your engagement, and I think it improves your business. So
It definitely does. And most of the committees are meeting by Zoom. So, you know, really not too much time commitment out of your business, and pretty rewarding to step up and volunteer. So hopefully we will see some of you signing up. So if not, I thank you all for being here.
Carol has a question.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I guess this is a Susie question, but last year, if you were on committees and you wanted to stay on this year, you didn't have to sign up. Are you doing it that way this year, or do you have to fill out the form?
Yeah, we're going to do that again. It's pretty easy, and e-car committees are generally fairly consistent from one year to the next. So the staff liaison for each committee will be addressing that with the committee to make sure we have the right list going forward.
Anybody else got any?
Go ahead, Carol.
This is just something I want to mention because I think it's important that brokers know, but I'm not going to go into many details. Maybe you would understand why I won't. But I would just like everybody to know that when you have an escrow account for your business, your escrow account is not covered under Regulation E, which is when you see that sign when you go to the bank and it says my bank is FDIC insured up to whatever amount of money. Escrow accounts are not covered under that. So I would just suggest to everybody that you talk to your whoever bank you use and get some kind of, I don't know what word I want to use, but I'm just going to say a lock on your escrow account so that the only money that can be taken out of that escrow account is through a written check on that account. And I don't want to go into any other details, but I think that's really important to know because we're the stewards of other people's money and we need to make sure that that money is safe.
I'm not sure why you're bringing that up. Hold on.
Begs another question, Carol.
Yeah. Where's my thing?
The question is that hasn't anybody ever lost money in a bank account before? you don't want to lose your escrow money. That's why I said it.
Okay, the CTR installation, is that
Oh,
open
that's right.
to all members?
No, sorry, I didn't answer that question because I got it after I was already on here. No, it's actually open to limited only because of spacing, but obviously the incoming president gets to invite her family and friends. And then it's the ECAR executive committee, the board of directors for ECAR, the local board presidents and president-elects, and then any past CTR realtors of the year, and this year's local realtor of the years. I think that's all. And then maybe that, I don't know if usually they hit their max by the time they get to that point.
Okay, and finally, Carol, did you want to expand, or Bonnie, on the Realtor Relief Fund? It's the 20th anniversary. Region 1 has a request for funds. So one of you.
You
go
want to
ahead
go
and-
first, Carol?
All right, I'm the state president of the Realtor Relief Fund, and the Realtor Relief Fund was started in 2001 by President Mendenhall of NAR when 9/11 happened. So this year is the 20th anniversary of 9/11. So NAR is trying to get coffers full, knowing that at any time there could be another disaster where home issues could be at risk. All the money in the Realtor Relief Fund is given to people it's not given to pay bills, it's given to people who are going to lose their homes because of natural disasters. And it's 100% given. There's no money for other costs. So this year they made a goal of getting $7.5 million into that coffer. And so far right now we're at like 6.7. And because it was still October and they were so close, they said they now changed it to $9.5 million. So they went to each region and gave each region an additional amount of money to try to earn by the end of the year. So region 1 is the 6 New England states, and this is an additional ask in addition to what we've already given. And CTR did give $50,000, and I do believe that the ECAR also agreed to. Oh no, maybe
We're going to vote on it.
no, I just said I gotta be quiet about that. But anyway, so they've asked local, states, and individuals to donate. If you're interested in donating, you can text region 1, the word region, REGION, and then the number 1 with no spaces. So it's region 1 together to 71777. And it will send you to the website. And that $45,000 goal will go down as people donate, and your name will scroll on the screen there. So
I also put the link in the chat.
oh, thank you. Thank you. So you can also click on that link. But we're looking to have $9.5 million by the end of the year. That's about the number that Richard Mendenhall was able to raise in 10 days after 9/11. So an entire year is not out of the realm. So if anybody wants to help, and anybody can donate to it. You do not have to be a realtor. You do not have to be a member of NAR. Anybody can donate.
It's a charitable organization. Yeah. So yes, the ECAR, the Board of Finance met Monday, and Tom's on the call, I think, and recommended to the board, which will be meeting Thursday, to donate $911, because that was suggested by NAR President Charlie Oppler to give you individuals, consider giving $9.11 or 911 in honor of 9/11. So it will get voted on, and if it gets a upvote, which I expect it will, we will be donating $911 from the board out of our charitable organization. So that's pretty much, I think, all we have.
One last thing I'd like to share with you guys is the forms library. The board has approved of a couple of licensing platforms. So just in case you don't use Dotloop or Transaction Desk or Zip Forms, which incidentally is running out as a free member benefit by NAR on December 31. We also have our library on DocuSign. We just contracted with Sky Slope, Glide, and the board will be looking at Broker Mint. So that's a handful of licensing platforms, and some of the larger brokerages use some of these. So we considered it as a member benefit to those people that use these other platforms to be able to access the eCar library if they are using them. And eCar does receive a fee for that. Just wanted to let you
If
know.
you are a broker and you have used some other kind of platform, please let us know and we'll reach out to them and see if they want to partner with the board. Susie will contact them.
Kathy asked the question, why is zip forms ending the free? That was an NAR executive leadership, I guess, decision. I don't think the usage was high enough, and I'm not sure if they are replacing it with anything else. But that was done at NAR level.
Got any
Bonnie,
more
Bonnie.
last minute questions?
It's Tom Switz. I just want to, I'm sure I speak for all of us by, I just want to say thank you to John, Jean, and Andrew. You know,
Yeah.
they
Fabulous.
volunteer their time, and I know that we all appreciate it very, very much. You guys are awesome.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely, and it's a special treat. It's always great to have Andrew and John on with us. They give so much of their time. You guys have no idea how much we ask of them, and they do it willingly. But it is a special treat to have Gene Marconi. For those of you who have been around for a long time, he has not gone away. He's still around, and he's a friend of eCar. So thanks, Gene.
So, well, thank
Gene,
you.
I think she just called you old, I think.
She did. I'll get her back.
Good.
Well, thank you. It's so great to see so many of you here today. And I do totally agree with you, Tom. Thank you so much to our attorneys who give so much of their free time to us and great advice. We really do appreciate it.
Don't forget to go out and vote in the annual election, and please tell your agents, please, please, please today. Thank you.
And don't forget to vote in your local election. There's a lot of realtors running for office. Driving around, I've seen quite a few of our members who are running for local office. So get out
Thank
and
you,
vote for
everyone.
them.
Thanks,
Thank you
guys.
so much.
Enjoy your
Thanks, guys.
day.
Thank you.
Good seeing you, Gene.